Hello and welcome to Transformational Travel. I'm your host, Gary White, and with me today, as usual, is my wife, partner, fellow traveler, Ellen Viva. Hi, Ellen.
Hi, honey.
So we have returned from Ireland. We had planned to go to Ireland and walk a pilgrimage road called Brigid's Way. And we got to Ireland and found out that Brigid had other plans for us. So tell us about that.
Okay, well, let me give some backstory. I've been walking pilgrimage roads for 40 years, and I began by walking the Camino de Santiago, the French way across Spain, in 1982 as part of my research for my PhD in anthropology. And Gary and I, that's 40 years ago, and 20 years ago, Gary and I walked part of the way to Santiago that's in France from Le Puy-en-Velay in gratitude for my successful cancer surgery. And I said, well, if they get it in time, I'm walking in gratitude. And if they don't, I'm walking because I can still walk. So this summer, it's been 40 years. And it seemed like, it's time to really mark this and really acknowledge and just spend some time thinking about these 40 years of my life and how central pilgrimage has been to me for so much of it, and to Gary since we got together. So I started looking for pilgrimage roads, and we're older now. So this summer, Gary was 85 and I was 75. And I knew we couldn't do lots of mountains and long distance daily hikes. And I had heard years ago about a new pilgrimage road called Brigid's Way that goes from near Dundalk in just south of the border of the Republic of Ireland with Northern Ireland.
Maybe I should put up a map at this point.
Yeah, and then south down to Kildare. There it is. There's the first map. Yeah, you can see Dublin, and you can see in the N, there's a little dot that is Kildare, and you can see above Dublin, straight up, Dundalk. So it's 90 miles, and it's a road that was constructed starting in 2012 there you go, yeah, in honor of Brigid the saint and Brigid the goddess. So let me back up a little bit and just say Brigid is a very powerful Celtic goddess who has been around for thousands of years and embodies a number of traits like the land, taking care of animals, abundance, safe childbirth, protection, the hearth, the forge, the fire, the sun. She's related perhaps with the sun goddess. And then with the coming of Christianity in the 5th century to Ireland, she kind of morphed into a woman who did exist named Brigid, who became Saint Brigid and lived maybe 450, 460 to 524, 525. Now, she may have been born in Fort, which is just north of Dundalk on that map. But at any rate, she spent most of her life in Kildare, and she founded a dual monastery, which the first one in Ireland, of both men and women. And St. Brigid is known for her generosity, her compassion, her concern for the environment, her peacemaking attributes, beer making, many, many miracles. She's a healer, very powerful, miraculous healer. She's associated with healing wells and so forth. So that's the background. And in 2012, Dolores Whelan and Karen Ward were listening to a lecture by one of the authors of a book called Island of the Setting Sun, which talks about ancient astronomy and relationship to ancient sites in Ireland. And Anthony Murphy and his co-author had discovered an alignment, a line that went from Fort, where Brigid may have been born, through a number of sacred sites. We've listed only a few here: the Hill of Slane, the Hill of Tara, and ending at the Curragh, which is a 8 square mile pasture land used for horse breeding and sheep raising that still exists today and was supposedly founded by Brigid. So there is this alignment, according to Anthony Murphy and his co-author Richard Moore, that marks the rising of Cygnus, the constellation, the Swan. And it marks the rising of that. It's a cross-shaped constellation that can be seen in the sky. And what they realized was if you follow this alignment, you will be pointing towards where that constellation rises. So swans are very important in Irish tradition and folklore going back for thousands and thousands of years. So Dolores and Karen had this brain moment, this brilliant moment of let's make a pilgrimage road that connects the birthplace of Brigid in Ford with these ancient sites. That's a medieval, it's a 2,000-year-old road that goes from Ford to the Hill of Tara. It's one of 5 ancient Irish roads. So they connected country roads that follow along that way to the Hill of Tara, and then more country roads that go through a few sites of historic and mythological interest, and ends at Kildare, where she founded her monastery and where she died.
So we looked at all of this and thought, that looks pretty flat. We might be able to walk this.
Right. And Karen and Dolores organized an annual pilgrimage in July that takes 9 days to walk 90 miles, which we knew was too far for us. But they have listed on their website, brigidsway.ie, they have listed their daily walks and places where they stayed. So I made up a complicated itinerary so that we would walk more like 6 or 8 miles a day and return to a hotel and then get bus or taxi to take us back to where we stopped walking, and then we start walking again and we go back, and it's a long, complicated story. We've done this when we walked from Santiago de Compostela to Finisterre 5 years ago, and it had worked quite well. So
we created these passports.
Yes, because passports or credentials are traditional on the Caminos de Santiago. They get stamped every day, and when you reach the end goal of Santiago or where you're going, you can show them as proof that you've walked a certain distance, and you can get a credential at the end, a certificate at the end. So we did our own. Gary did this, and you can read that maybe. Brigid's Way combines the ancient, and I won't pronounce this right, I'm sorry, Sli Mulacra and the Cygnus alignment, pointing from Fort to Kildare. Following the path, we journey across space and through history, honoring both Brigid the goddess and Brigid the saint. And the other part of this passport on the left are words from a song by Elaine, who is a wonderful singer-songwriter who is a follower, very connected to Brigid. And she's been writing some beautiful songs in honor of Brigid of the Flame, oh, holy name, Brigid of the Holy Well, the source that brings us home again. So that's there. And then inside is space for getting signatures or stamps along the way. And Gary, if you take that down, I'll show, I have our passports out. So what we did was every day we had somebody meaningful that we were in contact with sign our passport as a memory of where we had been and who had been there, that had helped us on our way, because every day there was amazing help. So that's the long backstory. It was to recognize 40 years of pilgrimage life and the importance of the Camino in my life and in Gary's life, and to do
And
something.
we said to each other, we will accept whatever Brigid provides for us.
Yeah.
We just say yes to people. And we, with that, started saying yes to many people, the first of which was Sally, who offered her home to us to stay in Dundalk while we did the first part of the road.
Yes, Sally Cox has a large estate called Lisnawilly that's on the edge of Dundalk, and we'll show you some slides of that later. But Brigid's stream flows through her land, and there's amazing things. And she offered generously to let us stay there. And Elaine had contacted her for us, and then Elaine contacted Dolores Whelan, one of the co-founders of this pilgrimage. And Dolores offered to take us up to Ford, where the pilgrimage starts, and to send us on our way. So maybe we should get to a slide. We've got the passport. Yeah. Okay. So up on a hill, the hill of Ford, is a very, very old cemetery. It has, it's probably in the midst of a hill fort, if I've got this right. Padraig, if you're listening, you can correct me, and I might be able to see it in a comment. Padraig is this wonderfully knowledgeable young man who Sally introduced us to, who you'll hear about more later. Anyway, so there is a cemetery there. There is perhaps the grave of Edward. Let me check who that was. I'm not going to find it here, but there are all kinds of. It probably dates to the late Bronze Age, to 1000 BC, and there are all kinds of things there, including a well dedicated to Brigid and Brigid's pillar, and a medieval church, and all kinds of other very interesting things, including the supposed grave of Edward the Bruce, who died in the early 1300s in the Battle of Ford that took place near there. So that's the cemetery on top of the hill. Okay, next. That's Gary holding the lantern that was brought by Dolores. The candle inside was lit from a flame that was relit as the perpetual light of Brigid. And so she brings that candle and relit it for us to start our journey, and had us set an intention of how we planned to walk and what we meant to do with this journey. We intended it to be more than just something for ourselves, but to be of service to the highest good. There is Dolores looking down. There's sort of half a beehive on the right, and underneath that, at the bottom of the steps, is one of many Brigid's wells. From there, that's okay, go ahead. From there, she drove us down the road about a mile to a more modern shrine dedicated to Brigid. It's called St. Brigid's Shrine, and a national annual pilgrimage takes place there in July in honor of Brigid. This is the oratory. There's also a little chapel. There is a holy well. I think we have a photo of it. I'm not sure.
Yeah, I think so.
No, I don't think so. But there's a stream, and there's a holy well. There are a number of stones there are 10 of them, and each of them has a healing association with it. This one you're supposed to lie on for help with your back, or maybe for things that are, Dolores has wonderful metaphorical understanding of it. And I think this one was, when your back is rigid or you're in some sort of stuck place. This might help break that loose. Okay. And then we started walking. So we were going to walk 6 miles from Ford back to Sally's. And we thought that would be enough for a day. And en route, we stopped in a church in Kilcurry that has some wonderful things, including a relic of Brigid. A relic is a piece of, in Christian tradition, well, not just Christian, but many traditions, body parts or items closely associated with a very holy or sainted person still retain some of that energetic juice, energetic power of the living person. And so there are bits of Brigid's skull, for example, there are 2 of them in Lisbon in churches.
And we've actually been there to see those.
Yes, yes. And this church in Kilcurry has a tiny piece of skull and also a beautiful stained glass window. And I'm not sure it shows up here, but the bottom window, the bottom of those 4 windows is Brigid. Yeah. She's commemorated in many churches throughout the world, and certainly in Ireland, in beautiful stained glass windows. She is one of the 3 matron saints of Ireland. St. Patrick, St. Comkill, or Columbo, and St. Brigid. And usually Patrick is first and Brigid is second. And she's going to be commemorated for the first time ever, a public holiday in Ireland commemorating a woman. But last year, the government decided to create a new public holiday. And they asked for public input. And overwhelmingly, Brigid's Day, which is February 1st, was chosen. So it will be the first time ever in 2023 that a woman is commemorated in a public holiday in Ireland. And I'll also mention, I mean, there's so much to say. I don't know how to condense it about Brigid, but the feast day for the Saint Brigid, which is the day when she died, not perhaps actually, but at least it's the day given to her, is February 1st. And February 1st is also the date of Imbolc, which is the Celtic cross quarter day associated with the lambing season, the beginning of spring, the coming back of vegetation to the land, the lactation of the sheep, of the sheep. And it is also the goddess Brigid's Day. So you have these things coming together. They're not separate. They're melded together and sort of mutually reinforcing. Okay.
So we thought we would walk on from Sally's, but Sally had other plans for us.
Yes, the next day we were going to walk south and start on Brigid's Way from there. But she said, no, you have to walk my land. She has an amazing amount of land. And she farms organic oats, and there's cattle, and there's also a deer park, and there are horses, because she also, she and her late husband were very important horse trainers. And she continues to train horses and board horses. But on this expanse of land is the remains of a hill fort hidden in those trees. And she invited her friend, Podrick, and I'm not going to say your right name correctly, so I'm not going to, and I'm sorry, but we'll post it so that Gary has a banner of it. And this young man is amazing. He is, I think, a reincarnated bard. He fills the landscape with his stories, the myths, the legends of Ireland, and it just comes alive with everything he has to say and the way he says it. He loves the land, and he walks it, and he has discovered probably a ruined wedge tomb on her land, and there are 3 standing stones that we'll show you soon that are related to Irish legend that he took us to. That's one of them. Supposedly a marker for Cuchulainn, who's a very famous Irish hero from about 0 AD, more or less. These are much older standing stones, but they have been melded in legend to the story of Cuchulainn. There's also Brigid stream there, and Padraig discovered through this intuitive sense he has for the land, this amazing double spiral on the bedrock on that hill. On that hill?
I think so.
No, sorry, but close to it on the land. Yeah.
So we walked Sally's land, but then they wanted to take us elsewhere because there was so much in that area.
This is Prolig portal tomb. It may originally have been covered with earth. It has a massive, massive top stone, as you can see. And it's probably, I don't know, 5,000 years old or so. It's on the edge of a golf course now. And you can see all the little stones on top. And the local legend is, if you pick up a stone and turn your back no, you don't turn your back, but if you can just throw it over and have it stay on top, then you will get your wishes and maybe get married within 6 months. We talked to one woman who said most of those stones belong to her because she'd been going there since she was a child and throwing them up there. But that was only one of many megalithic sites and standing stones and wonderful places that we went with Sally and Padraig.
There's the land.
There is. This is a picture north of Sally's. I think that's looking to Slievengulion, to a very important mountain that has a tumulus, a very ancient megalithic site at the top that's oriented astronomically. And then there's Sally hugging a wonderful standing stone. And again, I will mispronounce this, and I apologize. It is Kilnasagaret standing stone. It was originally a megalithic standing stone, perhaps, I don't know, 3,000 to 4,000 years old. And it has been Christianized by having numerous crosses inscribed on it. And it has actually written on it something that enables the more recent carving to be dated to about the 700s. Padraig thinks that this is related to markers that were marking an ancient pathway. And it's near an old monastic settlement that's now in ruins.
And they also took us to Dundalk.
Yes, this is Wednesday now. I mean, we started on a Sunday walking and then not walking. And on Wednesday, we needed to be somewhere else because of all the hotel arrangements. So we spent the morning in nearby Dundalk with a tour with Padraig. And there are a number of wonderful frescoes that had murals on buildings in Dundalk. And this one really shows this melding of the goddess Brigid on the right as you're looking, and Saint Brigid on the left. And they are both associated with fire. You can see the fire behind the goddess on the right, and dandelion because of its appearance like the sun, and
her cross, of course.
And her cross. So Brigid's cross, I have one here. Oops, let me see here. Yeah, is woven, historically woven out of reeds, and it has a square weaving in the middle that, as you bend each of the reeds and interweave them, you end up with 4 arms and the square in the middle. And we were told that the correct way to hold it is at an angle, so there's like a diamond, not a square. And this is because it references the turning of the seasons. And it may well be related to an ancient pagan sun sign. It has some semblance to some of the early swastikas before it was so perverted by Nazis. But for thousands of years throughout the world, you find that sort of four-armed symbol, and it spins and turns.
Here's the one.
Here's one in the church of St. Nicholas in Dundalk, and there's a little fragment of bone that is said to be from Brigid. And you can see again this four-armed, turning, energetic, spiraling symbol that is both a cross and a sun symbol.
So we're obviously not walking. We're doing all of these other things, which we had said we will do whatever Brigid asks us to do, or whatever is offered to us, and we're simply taking everyone's offer. And we're having a wonderful time, by the way. So
there should be another one of the chapel. Is it next?
Yes.
There you go. In the same church, this is the chapel dedicated to Brigid. You can see her. You can see the Brigid's cross above the archway, and she's holding a staff. There's a legend that when she was consecrated, so she's in her mid-teens, she refuses to get married, and because she's going to take the veil and lead a celibate, holy life as a lover of Christ. And the story goes that the bishop who came to consecrate her as a nun made a mistake and read the consecration for bishop. And then he was told, "Oh, look what you did." He said, "Well, let it be." And so there's one legend that she was therefore a bishop, and if so, she was the only woman ever in the Christian hierarchy to hold the position of bishop. And this is one more example of her great importance and her administrative power in early Ireland, in the early Irish church. And the information we do have about her says that she did meet with many bishops. She traveled around to other churches in her region, and she did other things that would be appropriate for a bishop.
So instead of walking, we are doing all of these other things, and we still have reservations ahead. So we had to think about how we get to the next stop on our.
And Sally was going to drive us, and Padraig was we were going to stop in these country roads. We're going to stop at all of those important places that the walkers making the pilgrimage would stop at. Brigid's holy wells, because there are many of them, and places related to Cuchulainn, to the ancient Irish mythology. But it didn't happen. Instead, a friend of Sally's drove us to our next stop, which was a town called Navan, which is not on the road, but it was the only place I could get hotel reservations because it's almost impossible at this time in Ireland, and because it's rural, and so there aren't a lot of places to stay. And then we went from Navan to the Hill of Tara, which is a very important place in Irish history and mythology. And it was pouring rain, and we met some friends there we had never realized were in Ireland at that time. And they invited us to join them on their organized tour, Illuminated Journeys tour, that day with a guide who was an expert on the Hill of Tara. And the guide is standing in front of the Mound of the Hostages, which is I can't remember if it's 4,000 years old or what it is, but it's a covered megalithic site, and there were burials and burial goods found within.
And that's Brad Berglund in the background there in yellow. He's the director of that Illuminated Journeys tours.
Right. He and Rita Berglund run Illuminated Journeys, and you can find them online if you look up illuminatedjourneys.com, I believe. They're based in the US. They lead amazing tours. This is also on the Hill of Tara. This is the famous, oh, Gary, you take over for a sec.
Okay, I'll talk. We have a delivery coming to our house, so Ellen's going to have to go let them in. This stone is called the Stone of Destiny, and it played a very important role in the crowning of kings of Ireland. The folklore is that when the true king of Ireland touches that stone, it will cry out. So the stone itself establishes who will be the next king of Ireland. So it's been on that hill. It has been moved from one site to another on the Hill of Tara, but it now rests at the top of the most prominent hill in Tara. So we spent a day with Brad and Rita Berglund and their group on the Hill of Tara, getting thoroughly soaked. We were soaked to the skin, but had a wonderful time because we had also their professional tour guide to explain exactly what we were seeing on the Hill of Tara. So our next stop was Robertstown.
Okay, sorry. We're doing this from home, and we live in Portugal. And I was waiting for delivery from Amazon. And if you don't get it when they ring the bell, forget it. So sorry, apologies. Okay,
so we're at
So now we've got
Robertstown,
Robertstown.
and that's the Grand Canal that I'm walking past, which goes right through that area, and it's a huge ancient canal system.
It was started in the 1750s.
Right. And it was used for transport and transporting goods and people until the 1960s, I believe.
Yeah, and it's still used for recreational boating travel.
Right.
Further on into the little village of Robertstown, along the canal, there are a number of houseboats that people live in or can rent for travel, and there are locks that raise and lower the level of the water.
Yeah. And here we are.
Wait. I just want to do a shout out to our wonderful hostess in Robertstown. And just say that this was not the pilgrimage we thought it would be. We were not walking 6 or 8 miles.
We had given that up
long ago, after I think the first day. And
right.
Instead, we were having these amazing opportunities to move deeper into the lives and legends and landscape of Ireland with these people we were meeting who invited us into their homes and who took us places and shared their lives with us. And it felt like they felt like Brigid's hands. I don't know how else to explain it, but they were sort of doing her work on the world of generosity and hospitality and helping the poor and needy, which we often felt like we were, not financially, but in terms of needing help and support to get a better hotel room or to find a place to eat or to get from one place to another. It was totally.
We were getting very tired as we did all of this.
Yeah, I mean, one example, and I'm just going to tell the story because these felt like, sort of mini miracles. So we're on the Hill of Tara, and you saw those photos, and it was raining. And I had the name of our taxi driver. And so we had lunch at the cafe there. And I called the taxi driver to get us and take us back to Navan. And he said, well, he said, okay, I'll be there in 10 or 15 minutes, but I'll have my wife and my dog with me. And I said, okay. And when he got to us, and it was just pouring rain, it turned out that he wasn't working that day. He had been in Dublin at a dog party or something. I mean, it wasn't a competition. It was dogs were going to go play with each other. And it was too wet. And so he and his wife had turned around. And when he got my call, he had tried to call other places, other taxis, including his son-in-law and others in the office. Nobody was available for more than an hour. And he decided, well, they were passing right by. And rather than leave us waiting for hours, he would just pick us up. And he did. And he
So
took us.
we met his wife and a little schnauzer.
Yep. And he would not take any money because, as he said, he wasn't working. And we kept having people do these really amazingly generous acts. And I'm thinking of that because here we are in Robertstown, and our hostess there was Karen, who's she was Brigid's hands in this part of, in County Kildare. And she arranged for us to go to an award-winning pub for dinner, and she or her husband was going to drive us, and they did, even though her mother ended up in the hospital getting tests, and she was going to drive us and show us places on the way back to Kildare on one day, which didn't happen, but it happened the next day. On Saturday,
and she showed us
Kildare,
the Curragh.
The Curragh. Now, this is the land, this is the 8 square miles that were covered by Brigid's cloak. The story goes that she had cured the King of Leicester of his ears that looked like ass's ears. She had somehow miraculously changed their shape. And she said all she wanted was the land her cloak would cover. And he thought, well, that's fine, because he didn't want to give her much anyway. And so when it came time to honor his promise, she put down her cloak and it spread. I mean, she'd asked him for land enough for cattle, to graze her cattle on or to form her monastery, depending on the story. And, he'd refused. And then she said, well, can I have the land my cloak will cover? And he said, well, sure, no problem. So she put her cloak down, and it miraculously kept growing and growing and growing and taking up all this land. He said, stop. And so it did. And so there's this 8 square miles of land that since the 500s has been grazing land, and horses are raised on it. There's a famous racetrack on the Curragh where horses are still raced today. And people who have lived there for generation after generation have grazing rights on this land. There didn't used to be a road through it, but that's another political story.
Right.
Yeah.
And her cloak then would have covered that entire pasture that you see all the way to the trees. That's the miraculous thing that happened.
Yeah. So Karen took us from Robertstown with a stop at Potterstown Fen, which we're not showing here, which is a very strange wetlands that has a walking wooden raised trail that goes through the fen. It's really a fascinating place. And then we stopped. A
place where you can walk on water.
Yeah.
And it really feels that way.
The energy there was really very disorienting. And then she took us to we're at the edge of Kildare. And at the edge of Kildare there are 2 separate sites of wells, holy wells, dedicated to Brigid. So this is one. This is Brigid's garden well, and this is the entrance to it. And there we are, happy to be there. There is a beautiful statue of Brigid, and behind it you can see all kinds of religious figures that people had placed there. We were told that travelers, with a capital T, are very fond of Brigid and her holy waters, and had brought a number of offerings. You can see on the tree on the right a number of ribbons or rags, and these are called cluti. And throughout Celtic lands, it's traditional to tie cluties cloths on trees near holy wells. And one story is that they are cloth that has been in contact with a person who's ill. And so you are basically placing the illness into the cloth and putting it near the holy well and praying for healing. But they go far beyond that these days. You can find rosaries and plastic dolls and all kinds of things. And they can, one has to do this with respect for the land and the trees. That's the actual well in Brigid's garden.
And there's another one similar
Yeah.
to, very close by.
Right, and this is the original holy healing well, and the waters from this well are still supposed to provide healing. And I will say this, that when we were walking from Ford, the first day when we actually walked 6 miles, we walked from Ford past that church where you saw the stained glass. And just outside of that, we met a man who lived nearby. And he told us how his son, his infant son, had been born with life-threatening kidney issues. And they had taken him daily and splashed water from the holy well at Ford onto this infant. And he had been miraculously cured. And he also told us other stories. And he said the documents are in the parish priest's house next to the church. So part of what I'm saying is this isn't only old stuff, it's ongoing and new in people's lives, in the narratives they have about belief and about Brigid. And I don't know, I haven't checked the records, but all I know is that this man just volunteered the story about his infant son, who's now 18 or 19 and studying to be a physical therapist.
All right. Okay, so
the woman in front there is Sister Phil. There are 3 sisters.
oh yeah,
Yeah, there are 3 sisters who run Solas Brigid Center, which is a spirituality center very near these wells on the edge of Kildare. And they are Brigidine sisters, which is an order that was restarted in the 1800s, but was understood to be a restarting of the original Sisters of Brigid in Kildare. And they are an educational order, and they have started this amazing center where you can go and stay in a retreat hut or go and meditate. And that's Sister Phil in front, and then behind is Bruce Berglund from Illuminated Journeys, because it turned out that they were in Kildare when we were, and they invited us to join them.
Brad Berglund, actually. But
Brad. What did
yes.
I say?
You said Bruce.
Oh, gosh.
So here we are in Kildare, and
there is a cathedral, but this is the parish church. And in the parish church is an alcove shrine with an icon of Saint Brigid.
And there's the cathedral.
Yeah, which is I think partly 13th century construction over what had been the original 5th, 6th century church in Kildare. And I forgot to mention, Kildare comes from Kildara, which is Church of the Oak. And the oak and worship in oak groves was very important to Druids, Celtic Druid religious practices. And so it's probable that there, according to the authorities, that there was a pagan Celtic shrine in this place, in the place of Kildara, that was perhaps sacred to Brigid. We don't know. But at any rate, it was later then taken over, morphed, shifted into a place of Christian worship, a Christian church, and Brigid's religious foundation. And there is something really, really interesting. This is the north side of the church. And what you see there is the reconstructed foundations of a fire temple. Now, what's a fire temple doing there? Well, Brigid's associated with fire. And St. Brigid supposedly, not supposedly, St. Brigid had a fire temple, a structure outside the church where a perpetual fire was kept burning. And there are stories about this fire being kept by 19 nuns, one each night, and the 20th night was Brigid, or the 20th day, and that they never blew on the flame directly. They used a bellows, and that men were not permitted in this sacred enclosure. And this fire, this perpetual flame, was kept burning until the 1540s, when under Henry VIII in England, who had control over Ireland, and the Protestant Reformation, they took over the monasteries and they destroyed a lot of the traditional practices. And
supposedly this is the site of that fire temple.
Yes.
But they say the original fire temple would have been round rather than square. So this is a 19th century reconstruction.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
The sisters, the Brigidine sisters, have relit the flame I think in 1993, and they keep the flame going. So these ancient traditions are alive. Yeah, you can see that's the Brigid cross inside the flame, and behind it is the globe. And one of their missions is to further peacemaking and environmental justice around the world. And they have a festival honoring Brigid's Day, either Brigid's. February 1st, it goes on for about a week, and it's called the Festival of Brigid in Kildare. And they have all kinds of speakers come and workshops for social justice and peacemaking.
And there's inside. They
have grounds that have sculptures. There's a labyrinth. There's a wonderful, wonderful experience to walk there. And if I remember correctly, the sanctuary their center is made in the shape of Brigid's cross. And there are these two round, you can see the one there. Those are meditation meeting spaces with the flame in the center. And that's the back, beautiful sculpture of Brigid.
And they were wonderful spaces. They were just really powerful. We spent a morning meditating in those spaces. So we have arrived at Kildare, which is the end of the pilgrimage, but we had not walked anything but the first day of it. We had done all sorts of other things.
And they were amazing. And the gifts we were given were incredible, of generosity and support and friendship. And I don't mean to interrupt you, but I'm just thinking about how I had thought, and we've walked lots of pilgrimage roads. We've walked the Camino Frances various times. We've walked at Finistère. We've walked in France. We've walked part in Catalonia. And we've walked a lot of pilgrimage roads, and I've written books about them. But, and I love those kinds of walks. They're in nature. They're on trails through forests. And you are walking in silence and stillness, and you are having this experience of, you're testing your physical limits, you're walking whether it's raining or not, but you are having a journey that is across the landscape, but also interior, the landscape, walking across the landscape of the soul, if I can say it that way. And this journey was completely different from what we had expected. The roads we would have been walking were country roads. They weren't trails through the forest. We would have been taxing ourselves much, much more physically than we were probably able to do. But instead of that, we had this glorious opportunity to meet wonderful people, to be gifted with friendship and support, to hear the stories from Padraig of the landscape that made it absolutely come alive. And also Karen, who grew up near the Hill of Allen and north of Kildare, and told us stories of how she grew up and how she understood the mythic landscape as a lived experience. So it was completely different, and it was brilliant. It was just brilliant.
And at the end, our friends Brad and Rita Berglund showed up in Kildare and invited us to join their group for the last few days. And actually, we ended creating Brigid's crosses. Rita brought all of the reeds that she had gathered, and we created Brigid's crosses at the end of the pilgrimage. We were on Glendalough at that point.
Yes, they had 2 places left. We were exhausted, totally exhausted from spiraling, changing plans. And even if we were walking 6 or 8 miles, we were walking 3 or 4 just during the day. And we were just exhausted. And they said, "Oh, join us." And they had 2 places left on their tour bus. And we said, "Okay." And much to our amazement, the hotel they were in had a room for us for 2 nights. Now, this was unheard of in all of the weeks I had been scheduling places to stay. No place had anything like that. And so we went, and there we are in Glendalough, which is another pilgrimage destination, actually. And there is a pilgrim's path that leads to it in County Wicklow. And it is a trail actually through nature, not on country roads. And there we are with our shared Brigid's cross, spiraling through the seasons like the sun, and like us on this journey, still trying to figure out what it was all about, and overwhelmed with the generosity and the experiences that we had on Brigid's way, full of gratitude to Brigid for whatever it was she was doing, and whatever this journey opened up for us.
Okay. Should we show our book on Ireland at the end?
Yes, if you go to our website, pilgrimsprocess.com, you will find a lot of books about pilgrimage that I've written. And you'll also find a lot of our other books, Powerful Places series, of one of which is Ireland. And the most recent one this past summer was on Sintra, Portugal, where we live now. But this one in Ireland was published, I'm not sure, 10 years ago? 8 years
Something
ago?
like that.
It lists a number of places. It talks about Kildare. It seems to have held up well when I looked at it again. And also lists other important sites, holy wells dedicated to Brigid in other parts of Ireland.
So we had agreed that we were going to keep this to less than an hour, and we're kind of coming up on that at this point.
Okay.
So maybe we should sign off.
I guess so. I don't see any comments on the StreamYard on the YouTube site. I may not be looking in the right place. If there are comments, we'll answer them afterwards. We'll also put a few links in comments to some of the to Porrick, for example, to Padraig. He's an amazing guide and highly recommend him. I will have a couple of articles coming out very soon. One in yourlifeisatrip.com and one in Ancient Origins Premium website about Brigid and Brigid's Way. And would love to hear from any of you who have questions or comments about the experience or Brigid. So thank you for listening.
Okay. And we'll be talking about all these things again.